The night air carried the sting of gunpowder and the faint cry of a wounded man. Clara Mayfield stepped onto her porch with a lantern raised, the wind tugging at her shawl as her children huddled behind the door. Down by the split-rail fence, she saw a figure sprawled in the dirt, chest heaving, a trail of blood marking his path through the dust. He had dragged himself this far, but not a step more. His hat lay crushed beside him, and the iron weight of his revolver gleamed in the lamplight, untouched by his failing hand. Clara's heart pounded. A man half dead on her land meant trouble, and trouble always came with more behind it. The silence of the plains felt heavier than any thunder. She knelt, brushing the dirt from his face, and saw the scar of a life carved by violence and pride. Then far off in the canyon, a rider's call split the night, answered by the thundering hooves of many more. The wind had turned mean that evening. It pushed through the brittle grass and cracked fence posts like an unwelcome ghost, whispering dry promises of hardship to come. Clara Mayfield stood with one hand on her hip and the other clutching a dented tin cup, eyes fixed on the dark line of the horizon. The sky wore a bruise of storm clouds in the far west, but rain was a lie out here more often than not. Her children, Ellie and Sam, tugged at the last of the wash, their small hands numb from the wind. Clara had not eaten since morning. The hens were molting, the well had gone shallow, and the earth behind the barn would not take another planting without mercy from the skies. The last good harvest lay buried with her husband, 2 years in the ground now, and every dawn since had been a war against surrender. That was when she saw him, a shape slumped just beyond the north fence where the grass turned to scrub. At first she thought it a coyote, matted and broken, but it did not move like an animal. She set down her cup and motioned the children inside. Her fingers found the rusted handle of the shotgun beside the door. The sky held its breath. She moved slow, steps silent through the dust. The shape groaned, turned, and the sun caught the glint of metal, no more than a revolver holstered but untouched. As she drew closer, the full figure came into view. A man, boots torn from long walking, shirt soaked red down one side, face half shadowed by a crushed hat. He had dragged himself, it seemed, from wherever death had last tried to claim him. He looked up with glassy eyes but said nothing, just breathed, shallow and slow, as if the effort of staying alive cost more than he could pay. Clara knelt beside him, heart thudding. She touched his forehead and found it burning like the iron skillet left on the stove too long. He was not dead, not yet, but close. Behind her the wind shifted. The chickens clucked nervously in their coop. Something in the air had changed. Clara stood, looking past the man and out toward the canyon trails. In the far distance, rising like smoke from the bones of the land, came the sound of hooves, faint at first, then sharper. She had lived long enough in this country to know the difference between a lone rider and a pack. What came now was no trader, no lost ranch hand. It was the sound of men who hunted by dust trails and silence, and she knew without knowing why that this stranger had brought them with him. Clara cursed under her breath, turned, and waved for Sam. The boy came running, wide-eyed. "Fetch water," she said, "and rags. Tell Ellie to boil what is left in the kettle." "Move fast." Sam nodded and ran. Clara dropped back to her knees, hooking her arms under the man's shoulders. He groaned again, lips cracked and dry. She dragged him inch by inch toward the porch, boots leaving 2 dark furrows in the dirt. The pain woke something in him. His hand twitched toward the revolver but stopped short. His voice was a whisper of gravel. "Do not try to speak," Clara said, "not yet." Inside, the cabin was no bigger than a hay wagon but warmer than the open ground. She laid him on the floor near the hearth and set about cutting away the blood-soaked shirt. Beneath the grit and grime was a frame lean with hard muscle and a shoulder torn by buckshot. The wound was days old, maybe more, packed with dirt and clotted with what little luck he had left. Ellie arrived with the water. Clara worked by instinct. She had buried a husband and birthed 2 children with only midwives and prayers. She had seen what infection did, and she meant to beat it back with fire and willpower. Outside, the sound of hooves grew louder. Sam came to the window, face pale. "Mama," he said, "there are men riding the ridge." "How many?" Clara asked. He counted slow, 6 or 7, maybe more. Clara stood, wiped her hands, and looked down at the stranger. His eyes were closed again, lips moving without sound. She did not know if he dreamed or prayed. She stepped out onto the porch, shotgun in hand, and stared toward the canyon. The riders were not yet close enough to make out, but dust curled around them like a funeral shroud. Whoever they were not in a hurry, but they rode with purpose. The sun had dipped behind the ridge now, turning the land gold and gray. Shadows stretched long across the plain. Clara felt the weight of the air, as if the land itself waited for something to break. Behind her the stranger stirred. A soft groan escaped his throat, followed by a word she could not make out. The wind paused just for a moment. Then from the distance came the clear, sharp call of a rider, high and cruel, and behind it many more hooves. Ash Harlow had not dreamed in 3 years. Not since the night flames rose over his ranch house and the screaming of cattle was drowned by gunfire. But now, as fever wrung the sweat from his body and Clara packed herbs against his shoulder wound, the dreams came anyway, full of smoke, blood, and Boone Carver's grinning face. He twitched on the floorboards, mumbling names only the dead remembered. Clara pressed a damp cloth to his brow and muttered prayers from habit, though she doubted any still listened out here. The children had gone quiet, huddled in the loft with the rifle. Outside, the moon hung low and red as old rust. Clara had seen wounds like this once, back when her husband returned from a brawl gone wrong. The edge of infection glimmered just beneath the skin, waiting to take hold. She needed to draw the rod out, but the tools were poor and the man might not survive the night regardless. Ash moaned again, head turning side to side. Beneath his breath, one word repeated: Boone. Clara paused. That name had weight. It drifted through the mining camps and saloons like wildfire. Boone Carver, a man who robbed trains and left no witnesses. If this stranger had crossed paths with Carver and lived, it meant one of two things. He had run far, or he had once been part of something darker. She glanced down at his side, where a brand peaked just above his belt line. An iron brand, the kind used not for cattle but men. Ash Harlow was no simple ranch hand. She sat back, bones aching. Maybe she had brought the devil into her home. Or maybe, just maybe, this man had once faced the devil and walked away. Outside, the coyotes howled, but Clara's mind drifted elsewhere. Years earlier, Ash Harlow had stood atop a vast empire. His cattle ran from the Red Ridge to the Salt Basin. Men rode for him, feared him, respected him. He had built it from nothing. One sickly steer, one rusted rifle, one stretch of drought-choked land. But that kind of fortune bred vultures. Carver had once ridden under Ash's brand, a hired gun with fast hands and empty morals. When Ash refused to sell out to a rail syndicate, Carver sold him out instead. One night the bunkhouse went up in flames, and so did everything Ash had built. Ash woke under open stars, half dead, left to the coyotes. He wandered, drank, cursed the sky. He had not drawn iron in over a year. The wound in his shoulder came from Carver's men when they found him riding south again, maybe out of pride, maybe out of madness. They had not expected him to keep crawling. Now he lay in a widow's cabin, one bad breath from dying, and fate seemed to coil itself around him once more. Back in the present, Clara moved to the window and lifted the edge of the curtain. The riders still sat on the ridge, unmoving, like wolves testing a fence line, waiting for scent or sign. One among them, broad-shouldered, coat flapping like crow wings, lifted a spyglass and studied the homestead. Clara let the curtain fall. She returned to Ash and poured another cup of bitter root tea down his throat. He choked, coughed, and for a moment his eyes fluttered open. "You are safe," Clara said, "for now." Ash blinked, words barely forming. "How far did I get?" "You are on my land," Clara answered. Ash looked at the low beams of the ceiling. His voice was gravel wrapped in ash. "Boone. He is not far behind." Clara nodded. "I know." Ash struggled to sit up but failed. His arm gave out, his breath hitched. "Should not have come here," he muttered. "They will burn this place." Clara's voice hardened. "Let them try." Ash stared at her, seeing something in her that reminded him of his mother, the same unflinching grit. "You should run," he said. "I do not run," Clara replied. He tried to laugh, but it came out as a grimace. The world swam again. He fell back into unconsciousness. By morning the riders were gone from the ridge. Tracks led down toward the river fork as if they circled off, but Clara knew it was misdirection. Wolves always backed off before a strike. Ash slept through the day, breathing ragged but steady. She tended the fire, fed the children the last of the cornmeal, and waited. That night a sound woke her, a creak near the barn. She stepped outside barefoot, shotgun in hand. A chicken lay dead by the door, throat slit, not taken for food, left as a message. Clara stared into the night. Somewhere out there, Boone Carver's men were watching, playing with her. She stepped back inside, bolted the door. Ash stirred again near dawn. This time his eyes stayed open. "I need my gun," he said. Clara brought it to him. He checked it with shaking hands, fingers remembering. "They will come tomorrow," he said, "before the third day breaks." Boone is never patient. Clara folded her arms. "Then we will be ready." Ash looked at her, not quite believing. "I owe you more than thanks," he said. "You owe me nothing," Clara replied. "You saved that debt when you bled on my land." Ash tried to smile. For the first time in years it did not hurt to do so. Then a sound outside cut through the quiet, 3 sharp whistles from the canyon. A signal. Clara stood by the barn at first light, her boots planted in dry earth that no longer remembered rain. The ground cracked beneath her like old parchment, and her breath steamed in the dawn chill. She held the shotgun loose in her arms, not from carelessness but from long, bitter familiarity. Across the clearing, Sam hauled buckets from the well and kept his eyes on the horizon, just like she taught him. Ellie fed the hens in silence. The air had changed. The 3 whistles had come just before midnight. She and Ash had barely slept since. Inside, Ash Harlow sat propped against the cabin wall, revolver in his lap, the look in his eyes no longer that of a dying man. His color had returned, and with it the weight of memory. He watched the window, jaw tight, as if waiting for the past to break through the glass and finish what it had started. Clara poured him a tin of water and handed it over without a word. He drank, then nodded. "We will not get through this with luck alone," he said. Clara nodded back. "I do not believe in luck." Ash looked around the small cabin, noting how clean and spare it was. Every corner bore signs of wear, every item placed with care. This was not the home of someone waiting to be saved. It was the home of someone who had already lost too much to lose again. He winced as he shifted his wounded arm. "Boone always plays first with fear, then with fire. I saw him do it to 4 farms west of Dry Fork, all burned before the 3rd sunrise." Clara said nothing. She already knew. Later that day the sound of hooves returned, not many, just one. A single rider moved down the trail from the canyon, slow and unhurried. Clara watched from the porch, rifle laid across her lap. The man stopped at the edge of the property. He wore a black duster and carried no rifle she could see. A strip of white cloth fluttered from his saddle horn. "Parley," Clara muttered. Ash stood beside her now, one hand resting on the doorway. "It will be one of Boone's lieutenants," he said. "Likely one who likes to talk too much." Clara stood and walked out to meet the rider alone. She did not wait to be summoned. She had buried one man already and would not flinch before another. The rider dismounted and gave a wide smile that never reached his eyes. His face was pale, his teeth chipped. "Miss Mayfield," he said, tipping his hat. She said nothing. He gestured toward the hills. "Mr. Carver sends his regards, says he knows who you are keeping warm in there." Clara kept her eyes steady. "This is not your fight," he continued. "Hand him over and we will be gone before sundown. Otherwise the next rider comes with fire." He held out a piece of paper. Clara unfolded it. Ash's face stared back from a wanted poster, creased and faded. 10,000 in gold. "He is worth more than land out here," the man said. "Not the kind you can plant, but the kind that buys towns." Clara folded the paper and tucked it into her coat. "You tell Boone Carver this land is not for sale. Neither are the souls on it." The rider's smile faded. "You have children, do you not?" Clara stepped closer. "I do. Which means I know exactly what I will do to protect them." The man mounted his horse. "When the fire comes, do not say we did not warn you." He turned and rode away. That night Clara sat with Ash by the fire. The children had fallen asleep in the loft, unaware of the storm circling them. "He will come hard and fast," Ash said. "He will not send more messengers. Next time it will be rifles." Clara nodded, sharpening a skinning knife. "You could run," Ash added. "Take the children. Leave me." Clara looked at him. "This is our home. We do not run from it." Ash studied her a long moment. "You have grit," he said. "More than I did when I had 10 times your fortune." "That fortune," Clara said, "still buried somewhere." Ash chuckled bitterly. "Maybe. I had a stash hidden before the fire before Boone turned. It was meant for rebuilding. I never got the chance. If we survive, she asked, does it still exist? Ash nodded slowly. Somewhere near Red Rock Gulch. Then you will show me, she said. If I live through this, he replied. You will, Clara said, or we all go down together. The next morning, buzzards circled over the canyon. Smoke rose from a nearby grove. Boone was sending signals now, burning the forest, choking the game, letting the land know he had arrived. Ash limped out to the barn and checked the saddle rifles. He had taught Sam how to load rounds. The boy was quick with his hands and steady in his stance. Ellie carried water like a full-grown ranch hand. Clara's children were ready as anyone could be. By evening, a silence settled so deep it made the skin crawl. No crickets, no birds, just the slow creak of the windmill and the ticking of the clock over the hearth. Clara sat by the window, shotgun across her knees. Ash sat in the corner, revolver in hand. Then came a flash. Glass shattered. A bullet tore through the lantern on the porch, sending oil and flame into the dust. Sam shouted. Ellie screamed. Ash was already on his feet, dragging Clara down. They are testing our nerves, he said. The real storm comes next. The porch still smoked at sunrise. Clara had put out the flames with a wet blanket and bare hands, her palms red and raw. The lantern lay shattered in the dust, a black ring scorched into the boards where oil had caught. The bullet that broke it was still lodged in the wall above the rocking chair. She had dug it out with the tip of her knife, rolled it in her fingers, and said nothing. Ash stood beside her, scanning the ridge with tired eyes. The wound in his shoulder no longer bled, but it throbbed like a war drum under his bandages. Still, he moved steadier now, more like the man whose name once made rivals think twice. His revolver was clean, reloaded, holstered with care. A rifle hung from his back. Clara noticed he checked the children before every patrol, spoke soft to Ellie, and tested Sam's trigger pull like a drill master. They were not survivors anymore. They were defenders. The barn had been reinforced. Sam and Ash had stacked feed sacks along the windows, driving nails into every post. Clara rigged lanterns and oil pots near the entryway, ready to be thrown if the fire returned. They hung bells on the fence posts to catch the sound of riders moving at night. No one would catch them sleeping again. Boone's men had not returned since the shot, but they were not gone. Tracks still circled near the stream, fresh bootprints mixed with horse scat and crushed wildflowers. A sign of wolves grazing near the herd before the slaughter. Ash stood at the well, sipping slow. His eyes were locked on the canyon trail. They will wait for dark, he said. Fire makes a man bolder when shadows do not give him away. Clara watched the horizon. Then let them come. The fire does not care who it burns. Ash looked at her, a faint grin under his stubble. You sound like I used to. I sound like a woman who has had enough. By late afternoon, clouds gathered. Not the kind that brought rain, but the flat-bellied kind that mirrored the land's tension. The air grew still, the kind of stillness that animals noticed first. Even the hens stayed inside. Inside the cabin, Clara fed the children and double-checked the loaded shells. Ash crouched near the window, adjusting the rifle sight with practiced care. Every movement came from memory now, muscle over pain, repetition over hesitation. Sam sat near the door, hands on the small shotgun Clara had taught him to use. Ellie stood beside the back window, holding the bell string that ran out toward the barn. Her eyes were wide, but her hands did not shake. Then the sound came. Not thunder, not wind. It was hooves, not fast, not in charge, a slow grind of riders making their approach without fear. 7, maybe more. Boone Carver did not believe in hiding. Ash took the front. Clara moved to the side. The children stayed inside, hearts pounding but still as fence posts. The first rider crested the hill at dusk. A silhouette against fading sky, long coat dragging, rifle laid across his saddle. Behind him, others appeared one by one, too far to see faces but not far enough to forget. They lined the hill like crows on a fence. Ash lowered the rifle. Too clean. They want to talk again or test our nerves before the strike. Clara did not answer. She stared at the center rider. Broad shoulders, black hat. Boone. He raised a hand and waved it once, then turned his horse and rode out of sight. Ash exhaled slow. Next comes the real thing. Night came in like spilled ink. The wind picked up. Bells on the fence posts danced, chiming sharp and fast. Clara crouched behind the old flour barrel by the porch, shotgun across her knees, waiting. Then a whistle, high, short, answered by two more. Ash hissed, "South side." Sam moved to the rear door. Ellie dragged a crate of lanterns toward the window. Clara lit the fuse on one and waited. Figures appeared at the tree line, shadows running low. 3, maybe 4 men. Too fast for aim, too quiet for horses. They moved with purpose. Ash fired first. The sharp crack echoed across the plain. One man dropped, rolled, crawled behind the woodpile. Another shot. Clara fired and missed. The blast kicked dust and smoke into the wind. Ellie threw a lantern. Glass shattered against a fence post. Fire spread fast across the dry grass. Yells rose in the dark. Gunfire barked back. Splinters flew from the side of the barn. Ash ducked, rolled, fired again. One of the outlaws fell with a scream that was cut short. "They are probing us," he called out, looking for weakness. Clara's voice was steady. "Let them find nothing." One more shot rang out. A figure moved along the chicken coop too close. Clara turned, aimed, and fired. The blast knocked the man backward into the dirt. Then silence. Smoke curled. Firelight flickered on the edge of the dry patch near the well. Ash crept forward and saw 2 bodies unmoving. 3 others were gone, retreated into the dark, or waiting to try again. They buried the first body just after midnight. Clara said no words, only dragged the outlaw's corpse into the ravine and let it roll. Ash leaned on the spade, shoulder aching. "That was just the beginning," he said. Clara nodded. "Then let it be the worst for them." Ash looked at her, long and hard. "You are not afraid?" Clara shrugged. "I was." That did not help. He wiped sweat from his brow, the firelight dancing in his eyes. "There is no reward for dying brave. Then I will settle for living that way." They returned to the cabin before dawn. Sam had fallen asleep beside the hearth. Ellie sat guard at the door, rifle across her lap. Ash poured a measure of whiskey into a tin cup and handed it to Clara. She drank without hesitation. Outside, the bells rang again twice. Then silence. Ash cocked his revolver. Clara stood, eyes on the door. A shadow passed the window. Ash Harlow woke with the sound of wood groaning under pressure. Not the natural settling of old timbers, but the weight of something heavy pressing against the porch boards. The light outside had not yet broken through the morning mist, but he could feel it. This was the hour before blood spilled, when even the wind dared not breathe. He rose, pain flaring in his ribs, and moved to the window. Clara was already there, holding her shotgun like a shepherd holds staff. Ellie and Sam sat behind the overturned table, eyes wide but unblinking. They had learned silence. They had earned it. Ash lifted the curtain. Boot tracks led from the tree line to the porch. One man had come close enough to knock and decided not to. Not courage, caution. Then came the whistle, high, low, then silence. It was the call of a hunter signaling others into place. Boone's men had surrounded the homestead during the night, and now the game was closing in. Ash turned to Clara. "It is time." She nodded. They knew this moment would come. Outside, footsteps creaked across dry earth. Clara slipped Ellie a fresh lantern. Sam held tight to his shotgun, knuckles white. The first shot came like thunder through glass. A window shattered behind them. Ash dove, rolled, and returned fire. Clara dropped to one knee and fired through the open door, the blast shaking the frame. Figures moved in the smoke. Ash counted 6. More would follow. "They are not testing anymore," he said. "This is the strike." Clara's voice was calm. "Then we hold." The bell by the barn rang out in one long, rattling scream. Someone tripped the wire. A second wave. Ash sprinted across the room, ducked behind the hearth, and fired 3 times in quick succession. One man screamed. Another returned fire, bullets splintering the mantel. The smell of gunpowder filled the room. Then fire. A lantern thrown from outside hit the roof. Flames bloomed near the thatch, spreading quick in the dry air. Clara turned to Ash. "We cannot hold them in the fire." Ash stared up at the ceiling, already glowing orange. "Then let us end it now." Ash kicked open the front door and stepped into the blaze of dawn. Rifle in hand, coat flapping behind him, his boots hit the dirt like drumbeats. Smoke curled from the roof above. Clara followed close, children still hidden behind. Across the field stood Boone Carver, black hat, broad shoulders, rifle slung low, knife sheathed at the hip. His grin was slow and cruel. "Well now," Boone called out, "alive after all." Ash raised the rifle. "Come collect your debt, Boone." The outlaw stepped forward unhurried. He motioned to his men, "Stand down." Behind Boone 10 men stood ready, rifles lowered but not dropped. This was not for them, this was between ghosts. Boone stopped 10 paces away. "You left me in the canyon to bleed, Ash. Took your cattle, your pride, and your reputation. You took more than that," Ash said. "You burned my people." Boone spat into the dust. "I built something with what you wasted. Now you hide behind a widow and kids." Ash stepped closer. "No more hiding." They stared. The wind stilled. Then they drew. 2 shots rang as one. Boone's bullet clipped Ash's arm. Ash's shot tore through Boone's coat, grazing his ribs. Dust flew. Ash dropped the rifle, drew his revolver. Boone lunged forward. Ash fired once, missed. Fired again, hit the thigh. Boone roared, tackled Ash to the ground. They rolled in the dust, fists and boots flying, weapons lost in the struggle. Boone reached for his knife. Ash elbowed him in the throat. Clara fired from the porch. The shot went wide but drove Boone's men back. Ash wrestled the knife from Boone's hand, drove it down, stopping inches from flesh. Boone's voice was ragged. "You do not have it in you." Ash growled, "Not for me, for them," and drove the blade deep. Boone stiffened, mouth open in shock. Then he slumped. Ash rolled off him, chest heaving, face streaked with sweat and blood. Clara ran to him, dropped to her knees. He tried to stand, but his leg gave out. Back at the house, Ellie threw water onto the roof. Sam called out, "The fire is dying." Ash looked toward the horizon. Boone's men had not moved. One stepped forward, looked down at their fallen leader, and nodded once. They turned, mounted, and rode away. They buried Boone Carver in the hard earth behind the barn. Ash sat beneath the oak tree, his leg bound tight, shoulder packed with herbs. Clara brought him a tin of water. He took it slow. "You saved them," she said. He shook his head. "You saved me first." Smoke still curled from the barn roof, but the flames were gone. Ash looked out across the plains. The sky was wide, pale blue, empty of menace. The widow stood beside him, not as a shadow to a man, but as equal to the fire he carried. He looked up at her. "That stash I buried, it is still out there, near Red Rock Gulch." She crossed her arms. "I reckon we could use it." Ash smiled. "If I live long enough, I will take you there." Clara looked out toward the fading trail Boone's men had left behind. "You have already lived long enough for me." Behind them, the wind picked up again. 3 days passed since Boone Carver's blood soaked the earth behind Clara Mayfield's barn. The homestead still stood, though the roof bore a black scar where fire had kissed it. The bells on the fence no longer rang. The wind was still. The kind of stillness that follows a reckoning. Ash Harlow sat on the porch with a blanket over his shoulders, his leg propped on a crate. His wounds had begun to close, but healing was not just flesh. His eyes tracked every shadow like a man who had lived too long with betrayal. But for the first time in years, the eyes did not burn with vengeance. Only weight. The kind you learn to carry when revenge is over and you are still breathing. Clara moved like always, early to rise, chores in hand, no time for stillness. Her children followed without needing words. Ellie kept watch over the hens. Sam split logs with small but steady arms. They worked not as survivors now, but as owners of peace hard-won. On the 4th morning, Ash called for Clara. She stepped onto the porch, wiping flour from her hands. "It is time," he said. "Time for what?" "To finish what I started." Red Rock Gulch. Clara studied him. The man who had crawled to her fence was gone. This one sat taller, voice firm, even with pain laced through it. "You are still hurt. I can ride. We have no horse. Then I will walk slow." Clara nodded. "If this gold you buried will make a future for these children, I will walk with you." Ash smiled. "I hoped you would." They left at dawn. Sam and Ellie stayed behind under the care of a neighbor Clara trusted like blood. The trail to Red Rock Gulch ran west, then dipped south past the edge of dry plains and into broken stone country, where jagged cliffs boxed in the wind and sun ruled the land like a god. Ash leaned on a stick, limping slow but steady. Clara walked beside him, rifle across her back. They spoke little. The land did most of the talking. Buzzards wheeled overhead, snakes rustled under brush, and each mile echoed the sound of boots on dry rock. Ash told her the story of the stash, how he had buried it under a twisted juniper near a cave once used for cattle shelter, back when he thought the land was still his. "I left it because I thought I would die before I could need it," he said. Clara looked at him. "You did die."